The following program is presented by the HTM Podcast Network.
Welcome to another episode of Turnbuckle Talk, Karl by thegrillposition.com and a proud part of the WWE Network. Presented by the Hitting the Marks Podcast Network, and now in association with IndiePW.com. We're sponsored by Collar and ElbowBrand.com, where you can get 10% off when using promo code JKPodcast at the checkout. And in partnership with HypeCityVapors.com, where you can get 15% off all your e-juice for your vape by using promo code JKPodcast. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter by searching at TBTalkPod. To listen to the podcast, you can find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and now also on Anchor and Spotify. As always, I'm Big Joe.
And I'm Karufel.
Yes, Karl, another week has come and gone in the world of professional wrestling. And I guess before we get to the bulk of things, just to catch up as we usually do, this past week it's been kind of just more in the same of living in this world of coronavirus, self-isolating, and all that kind of good stuff still going on.
Well, for those that can self-isolate, I hope that you are continuing to do so and trying to flatten that curve, as they say. I hope that is what all of you are trying to do. As all of you know, if you have not listened to the podcast before, Big Joe and myself are actually considered essential services. Yep. Big Joe working in a retail world, myself working in the world of private security. So we are both working still, which I guess is a good thing. For those of us that are working, we're still, able to gather that paycheck and not have to rely on the government-funded money that is being given to everybody. Just quickly on that, for all of you, make sure that you're putting some of that money aside, because that money is taxable. I don't want any of our listeners that are getting, in Canada at least, I don't want any of our listeners that are getting that money to just think that everything is going to be fine at the end of the day. Come tax time, you guys are going to have to pay taxes on that because you have to claim it as income. So just a quick little tip for y'all. Make sure that you are setting aside some of that for tax time next year.
You actually read my mind, and I was going to bring up the same thing that, this is not just here's some money and that's the end of it. It's definitely going to be taxable income. And for those that now, supposedly this has changed recently too. Again, this is just purely in Canada. I don't know exactly how this is happening in the U.S., but pretty much I guess anybody can apply for this benefit now and receive it. But if you're somebody that's just kind of getting it for extra money, you're possibly likely going to have to pay it back. It seems like it's kind of up in the air, so you may or may not. It's essentially like a loan at this point. So I will say, if you don't need it, don't apply for it, because it's just going to be more money you owe later.
That's right. At this point, it seems as though what they're trying to do is just they're going to approve everything and then reassess them later. So if you apply for it and you are still working and you're getting that paycheck coming in and they know that you are because of taxes coming off of your paycheck, they're going to find out that you're working and received that money. And then they're going to, kind of send you a bill in the mail saying, you owe us that money now.
Yeah. So just be careful if you don't need it. But at the same time, too, I don't know about you. This likely won't happen. I'm almost getting to the point now where I almost wouldn't mind a couple of weeks off just to kind of decompress. Because like you had mentioned at the top, you and I have both been working through this entire thing, and it seems like everybody else is kind of on quarantine. So it's that could possibly happen with me. I know with you, you're going to be busy pretty much to this whole thing. But there's a chance that I might get a little bit of time off, which honestly, at this point, would be kind of a welcome thing to have. So
Well, for me, going in to work tonight, I work with the overnight shifts. I do mobile patrol for the company. I am the operations manager of the company, but we're so busy right now that both or all three of the management within the company, the president, the vice president, and myself, we are all out in the field working still. And tonight will be day 5 of 7 days that I will be doing. So
Crazy.
Yeah. After all of this, if it were possible, I would love to have just a couple weeks off to just sit back and relax. But I know in my profession that's not going to happen. That's what I signed up for when I started this journey into the world of private security.
Absolutely. All right, Karl, well, getting into some wrestling discussion. Speaking of signings, or I guess in this case, a de-signing or a getting the hell out of there. This is something that's been on the right. The writing has been on the wall. It's something we've been watching for a long time, and it's finally happened. The Revival have been released from the WWE. Now, as far as I know, because their contracts essentially ran out, I believe that there's no 90-day no-compete clause there in place, so they're pretty much free to go where they want at this point. Having said that, what do you think these guys do?
Just to piggyback on that, it is my understanding as well that the 90-day clause is not in there because the contract ran out.
Yep.
So they could show up absolutely anywhere at any time. The big talk, obviously, Young Bucks and All Elite Wrestling. I mean, that's the big thing. Everybody seems to continue with that. I mean, there was on all of the being the elites and hashtag FTR and FTRR and all of that stuff was happening. So I mean, that's clearly at some point we're going to get that. I would prefer NWA. There are so many great tag teams that are in the NWA right now that are just guys that were kind of put together, and it would be a nice breath of fresh air to actually have a solidified, bona fide tag team in the NWA.
I'm kind of right there with you a little bit. I think ultimately AEW could be where they end up, but I think I'll say do it for a good year, if not longer. Where I say that they should go, Karl, is Ring of Honor, because then that opens the door to New Japan and to the NWA since they're associated with both programs there. So to me, that is the place that makes sense.
And that's a very good choice as well. And I mean, even within Ring of Honor, there are great tag teams that are in there. Yeah. So I mean, tag team wrestling right now, not so much that it's hot, but it's continuing its path there of being relevant still, which is good. I mean, there was a time where we completely lost tag team wrestling. Seemed to have kind of gone on a decline after Teddy Long.
Yes.
Holla holla, playa.
Yep. After
Teddy Long kind of was done with the professional wrestling world on a national television stage, at least, that tag team wrestling seemed to have declined a little bit, but it garnered a reputation for being good wrestling and started to make a rise again. And it seems to have plateaued right now, but still some good tag team wrestling happening.
I wouldn't even mind seeing these guys make a stop in MLW. There's a lot of good potential matchups there too. The big one that would stand out to me that would be really interesting, given that the Revival are kind of like a throwback style type of team, the Von Erichs, right? So just picture a matchup between the Revival or whatever they're going to call themselves at this point. I know that they're changing their individual names. What their team will be called, I don't know. But yeah, a matchup between these guys and the Von Erichs. Those Von Erich kids are just incredible. So it would be, I would pay money to see that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I would too. And I mean, like I said, there are so many great tag teams that are out there that really aren't being showcased in the way that they could be. But this is something that definitely, I think we're going to really see a nice rise, hopefully, in professional wrestling. And because of the Revival's move to wherever they're going to go, because people are following this story. People are definitely interested in where are they going to go, what are they going to do, what's their name going to be, how are they going to make an impact. And I think that the impact that the Revival is going to make is going to be substantial.
Mm-hmm. Going from that, it actually leads quite nicely into the next topic here of dream tag team matchup scenarios. And I'd mentioned that one right there, the Von Erichs versus the Revival. Other good matchups that the Revival guys could have. I mean, just the list is pretty long and distinguished outside of WWE now. So it's going to be really interesting to see specifically with these guys what they could do if they decide to kind of test the market a little bit and not just go a little too narrow. I think if they go straight to AEW, I don't think it'll be bad, but I think that they could have so many good potential matchups if they decide to kind of play around a little bit. So like I said, the first big one for me is the Von Erichs and the Revival. But you had mentioned tag team wrestling seems to have kind of been on the rise a little bit. What are some other dream tag team matchup scenarios that you'd be interested in seeing?
I mean, with all of this talk about the Revival right now, I've kind of been throwing them around a little bit in my head with some of the different tag teams that are out there. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the biggest ones that I would love to see right now would be the Revival and the Briscoes.
Yes.
All four of those guys, they're old school, but they're new school at the same time. So I think that there's a potential there for not only a 5-star, but we're looking like a 7-star match coming out of those four gentlemen being in the same ring together. I don't know. That's hard to really talk about. Dream tag team matchups that we'd like to see, because there's just so much that and a lot of it right now is on the independent scene, whether it's like Ring of Honor or whether it's Impact or NWA or any of that, right? So I mean, a lot of it we've already kind of seen in one way or another. When you sent me the run for this week, my initial thought for this went to more of like, I'd want to see like the Briscoes versus Demolition, right? Or see the Revival against the Natural Disasters, Tugboat and Typhoon, and to see how those would all kind of mesh together with the Revival being kind of old school but new school, and the same with the Briscoes as well, right? So that's kind of where my mind had gone to, like those types of dream matchups.
There's some potential ones inside the current landscape as well. I'll use these guys again, the Von Erichs over at MLW, a matchup I'd really like to see. It would be a bit of a stretch. I would say probably next to impossible to happen, but a guy can dream, and that would be the Von Erichs against the Guerrillas of Destiny over in New Japan. I mean, Tama Tonga and his brother against the Von Erichs. I mean, damn, that would be 5-star match written all over it. I mean, there's quite a few to pick from, and then like you said, we can go back in time. The Hart Foundation, maybe the original Hart Foundation versus that new Hart Foundation that there was. Mind you, that was kind of a little short-lived, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a few interesting tag team matchups that we could have, and I think that this Revival being outside of the WWE is going to facilitate a lot of that.
I hope it does, because tag team wrestling is fun and it's exciting to watch, especially if you allow them to go out there and not just do spot dives. We don't need that. We don't need, just all of the making sure that everybody's finisher move gets in there and all of their signatures get in there and everybody's kicking out of everything. We don't need that. We need good classic, hold that rope in the corner, reach your hand out, get that tag, get that hot tag.
Yep.
Get that hot tag.
Ooh, pun.
And then get in there. And that's the classic double down in a tag team match is phenomenal if done right. And I think that we really need to kind of get back to that style of a tag team match.
just briefly there, you had mentioned Hot Tag, a little cheap plug. Coming up this Wednesday, Rick Vickery and myself will be debuting the Hot Tag WrestleCast, which I am having the pleasure of being the producer and co-host on, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be good stuff there. But one last thing that I want to mention with this tag team for dream matchup scenarios is probably, for me, like the ultimate current one that obviously would not be able to happen just due to current contracts and companies and whatnot. And that would be, of course, the Young Bucks versus the Undisputed Era. That would be, or the I guess maybe the Elite versus the Undisputed Era. That would be a pretty interesting thing if if companies didn't exist, I guess.
That's right. That would be a classic matchup for the ages.
For sure. So going from something that would be a classic matchup for the ages to something that, at least in my mind, isn't. This Ronda Rousey business here, Karl. I don't know if you've been seeing this kind of stuff going on, but this is creating a bit of a stir with Ronda and some very choice words about professional wrestling. I actually have the quote from her Twitter. Maybe I'll start off by reading that here.
Yes, please.
Just to kind of lay the groundwork here. I'm just scanning it quickly for F shots and whatnot, and it looks clean. So we'll go with it. So right from Ronda Rousey's official Twitter, hashtag kayfabe killer. That kind of says it right there. Anyone who is outraged by me calling pro wrestling fake fights for fun has never been in a real fight. Well, you all are tiptoeing around bruising some pro wrestlers' huge soft egos. No one is thinking about the real fighters you're insulting when pretending pro wrestling is somehow on the same level of realism. Yes, I understand wrestling 300 days a year for years on end is incredibly tough on the body and a difficult profession, but do you know what would happen if you got into 300 real fights in a year? You would be dead. This is obviously clearly a work here, Karl, to try and turn Ronda heel, but this is a bad work. This is bad. It's in bad taste. It's bad timing. It's bad all the way around. I understand it, but I don't like it.
Honestly, I hope with all of my heart that this is clearly a work. Mm-hmm. If this is actually, because we know that Ronda Rousey is a very opinionated person and that she just doesn't care and she will spew whatever verbal diarrhea out of her mouth that she wants. We've seen it before, and I know we'll see it again. And I hope that this is actually a work to maybe allow her to come back into the WWE as a heel. This is... It blows my mind. She was in there. Yeah. She was in there. And she does have some good points there, right? It definitely is different from actual fighting. It definitely is. You take a look at like boxing. Yeah. Right? And then you get like celebrity boxing, let's say. Right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, like they're two different worlds. They definitely are. One is entertainment, and one is prize fight, pretty much. Yeah. Right. So I mean, you kind of look in almost in a roundabout way the same type of thing here. So if this is not a work, I feel sorry for her because the WWE gave her absolutely everything, put her over, and made her huge in the world of professional wrestling. Yep. Gave her the very first main event for the women at a WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. She was part of that. Yeah. They gave her, the WWE Women's Championship, which they didn't have to do. No. She could have carried on her own just with her name. They didn't have to put a title on her, but they did. Yep. They made her essentially the first MMA female star to hold a WWE championship. Yeah. Like these are accolades that are going to stand the test of time. They're in the history books. There is no other woman in the world of MMA now that can really claim they have come in that type of a stature and won the WWE Women's Championship, short of Shayna Baszler, who as well was MMA, and she came in and won the NXT Championship and stuff like that, right? But Shayna Baszler has never been the forefront of a WrestleMania.
No.
She was never on the marquees for WrestleMania. She wasn't a name that was a draw at a WrestleMania or at a SummerSlam or at any other pay-per-view or event that was happening. So it makes me a little bit heated, but at the same point, I take a look at where it's coming from. Yeah. Someone who just seems to be bitter.
Yeah. For me personally, just right off the hop, I have no desire to see her back in not only WWE, just professional wrestling in general. I was not a fan of her original run. For me, I'm a traditionalist, right? I'm an old school guy, and she doesn't take the business seriously, and that's where whether it's work or not, just that whole attitude just doesn't fly with me. With this too, and even if it's not a work, it still comes off bad for her because, I mean, her shtick has always kind of been when she gets into something and she's arguably successful, but the competition wasn't let's look back at her UFC days. I don't know all the potential matchups, but I mean, until she got her ass handed to her, her opponents were not even in the same league as her. I mean, they were pretty. I wouldn't say pushovers, because I don't want to downplay any of them, but I mean, they weren't in the same league. And as soon as she came up against a real legit professional, Holly Holm is the one I'm talking about. I mean, she was a legitimate kickboxing champion that came into MMA, and as soon as she ran to real competition and lost, she cried about it and left. So when it comes to professional wrestling, it almost feels like history is kind of repeating itself. Now, like I said, given that, I mean, this should be a work, but even if it isn't, honestly, whatever direction it goes, I don't like it, and nothing really surprises me at this point with her. It's a shame, Karl, because just looking at her non-professional career, I mean, inside the Olympics and judo and whatnot, and who she was trained by, I mean, she has tremendous accolades and pedigree there, but just the attitude is what I think really kind of holds her back. And people keep telling me all this crossover appeal with these MMA people. I just don't, I frankly see it with her, just because her appeal in UFC was only, like I said, only until she was beaten very handily, and then she just disappeared. So it just it's definitely not in the same league as a Brock Lesnar, where a guy that just goes in and just kind of dominates seemingly at will. His most recent foray into UFC, I think it was UFC 200, went and beat a top 10 heavyweight with having a big span of time in between a previous fight there, and went in and just beat the guy. So we're talking completely different things here. And like I said, I frankly, whether she comes back or not, I really, really don't care. That's really what it comes down to.
With all of this MMA crossover stuff that's happening, and you talk about history repeating itself. Cheap plug here for the latest episode of Dark Side of the Ring, where they showcased the Brawl for All. Yeah, I mean, clearly, again, this is coming back to the same thing. I mean, this is just history repeating itself once again. The Brawl for All. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on Daily Motion. Dark Side of the Ring, Season 2, Episode 4. I thought it was done very, very good. Yep. Very, very nice. They went into things, in a subjective way, I guess you could say, and they got different views from different people. We're talking views from Jim Cornette. We're talking views from especially right. Yeah. Like just a whole bunch of different views from different people, and that saw things, the good and the bad of all of it. Talking with Bart Gunn, who essentially went in and won the entire tournament, which nobody thought was going to happen. Yep. But it was, you had that crossover back then, back in the 90s, and it didn't work. And now you're trying to do it again, but now with MMA fighters instead of boxing, and it didn't work then. And I'm sorry, I mean, short of Brock Lesnar, who was, a collegiate professional or a collegiate wrestler turned professional wrestler, Then he went to MMA. So short of Brock Lesnar, all these MMA people coming over, I don't see the appeal, and I don't get it.
A couple things based off that. I'm glad you brought up the Brawl for All, because that was definitely very well done. We definitely saw as well that the heat between Jim Cornette and Vince Russo is still very much there. I can't really repeat a lot of what Jim said, just because of the nature of the words. I mean, I know people are very polarizing, or have a very polarized opinion on him. I still respect Jim as a mind in the business. You can say what you want about his personality, whatnot. The guy's very knowledgeable in the business. It's just a matter of, I guess, your take on that. For the Brawl for All itself, what it all comes down to with that is that they went through all of that trouble and hurting their talent to not even put over a star in that whole thing. That was really ultimately what made it such a shit idea, is that just all of that resulted in nobody being built up as a star. Really nobody kind of came out of that good, except for maybe arguably JBL. Also with this too, surprisingly, I've actually seen some people trying to pitch this idea to me. Oh, this is an idea that I should bring back. No, that this is not going to happen again. That this should not happen again. And this is one thing you had mentioned with the MMA crossover that has me a little slightly concerned, is that they could kind of get drawn into that type of scenario. And when you do have some of these MMA / professional wrestlers, at what point, Karl, whether it be Brock Lesnar, whether it be Shayna Baszler, whether it be Ronda Rousey, when they're in a professional wrestling match, what if they forget that this is a professional wrestling match, or this turns into a legitimate shoot? Whether they forget to pull that punch, or whether they forget to do the armbar a certain way. What happens when something like that happens?
Well, I think if something like that were to happen, then we will clearly see how tough professional wrestlers actually are. And I mean, that was essentially one of the reasons why Brawl for All came in, was because someone in the back, and I'm not going to, spoiler alert, I'm not going to give you any spoiler alert. Go and watch the episode, because anything from the Dark Side of the Ring has been phenomenal. But somebody in the back pretty much had said, I could beat anybody in here in a legitimate fight, right? So they're like, okay, let's see. And they went out there and did that. They actually found people that were good at just legitimately fighting. Yep. And I mean, I think that we would definitely see, like, if I don't even know if there are, to be honest with you, any women on the roster right now that would be able to stand toe to toe with a Ronda Rousey in a legitimate fight. I honestly, I don't think that there really is any. They're all performers. Yeah. But I mean, on the men's side of things, I think Braun Strowman might actually in a legitimate fight be able to do some damage, whether it's to a Brock Lesnar or any other type of MMA star. So I mean, there are some names on the main roster that could possibly do that. Even a Bobby Roode. I think of Bobby Roode. He's done professional wrestling his entire life, but I think that he legitimately could stand toe to toe in an actual fight. Yeah. So I think that's. And it's terrible. I don't want to see it at all. I don't want to see that somebody like an MMA star that's in there kind of inside their head, it clicks, hey, this is a shoot now, and I'm fighting, because I mean, that just could be so bad. Yeah.
Just back briefly on the Ronda Rousey thing, I would definitely agree with you that in a judo style fight, that none of the girls in WWE could probably stand with her, with the exception of maybe like a Natalia or something, might be able to possibly. When it comes to a fight, when you have to remember, we have to look back on Ronda's UFC career. She was a judo fighter. She never really had a very well-rounded game when it came to standing, punching and kicking with the other girls. Once she had to do that, we saw the end of her UFC, her MMA career. So she was good, but she wasn't well-rounded like you have to be now in that sport to stand a chance. So that's one thing that's very much changed from the early days of UFC, where you saw like a real hodgepodge. You saw like judo guys, you saw karate guys, you saw boxers, you saw taekwondo, you saw jiu-jitsu, and it's evolved to the point where you need to be good at all of those things. Otherwise, you don't really stand a chance, because like these guys are training, guys and girls are training all these things to kind of combine into this hybrid sport that is MMA.
And they have to be trained so well, because all of the things that they're doing are happening live.
Yep.
There are no takes.
Nope.
There are no stop and starts. Everything is happening live.
Yep.
Which, speaking of that, Joe, what do you think of the WWE going back to doing live programming, starting essentially this week?
Yeah.
Or I guess next week. Starting next week, we're going to be getting back to live Raw and SmackDowns.
Unless they're going to directly copy what AEW is doing. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, is their stuff not taped? Or are they airing that live on Dynamite? I don't see it.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
It seems as though that it is taped.
Yeah.
Now, it could very well be that just portions of it are taped.
Mm-hmm.
I know that different little things like the Chris Jericho and Damascus or Matt Hardy, broken Matt Hardy skit, let's say, that was done. Obviously, that was something that was taped. There's
absolutely.
no way that Matt Hardy is magical and can, teleport and switch his positions.
Damn it.
Okay. Even if he is broken, or even if, he does possess the power of Damascus or whatever it is.
Whatever it is,
yeah. He doesn't have that.
Yep.
So that's something that was obviously pre-taped.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like it looks as though that it's live. It doesn't look as though it's been pre-taped. I think that something that they are doing is stopping during commercial breaks.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of instances now where they're like, "Oh yeah, back to live programming," and then like you see somebody clicks and they're like, "Oh yeah, I gotta go," and then they,
Whoops.
So I've seen a little bit of that. So I think, probably they are still doing live programming shows, but just taking that break within commercials.
See, my issue here, I'm thinking bigger picture on this when it comes to WWE getting back to live programming and, potentially maybe having people in the audience. To me, this opens up a bit of a Pandora's box here, Karl, because you're going to have a lot of these companies that are going, well, we can't be open and do anything or have people around. How come this wrestling company gets to do it, right? So this could set a bit of a precedence, and like I said, could kind of cause a bit of a kind of a shitstorm, for lack of a better term. So it's got to be kind of one of those things where if you're going to open the door for this, then you got to start opening the door for other things, other businesses that are on the verge of vanishing into oblivion. I don't know about where you are, Karl, but I mean, there's some places here in Brantford that are, very small businesses. If they don't get back up and running soon, they're going to be in serious trouble, if not just go into non-existence. So as much as I'd like to see WWE get back to live programming, which I probably wouldn't end up watching anyways, I think that it's not time yet.
We're already seeing that, to be honest with you. I mean, Dana White is going out there trying to secure a private island to be able to get fighters to have MMA shows, so that there's no government that is there to stop them doing what they're going to do or what they want to do. And people are already saying, WWE Vince McMahon can keep running his shows. Why can't we have MMA? Right. So we're already starting to see that. And it's, like you said, I mean, we're going to have to go one way or the other with this. We're either going to have to, nope, they shut down as well, or they're going to have to start opening it up to allow other companies like the UFC to be able to put on shows.
Because in my opinion, Karl, it's not the time yet. There's still too much uncertainty. There's still too many people that are sick. Too many people that are still dying here. There are other ways to consume professional wrestling right now here, Karl. And this is kind of segueing into our next topic here. This is a great opportunity to go and watch a lot of really good content that's out there. Specifically, I'm going to point my finger squarely at Ring of Honor on YouTube. They have been putting out a ton of their catalog out there for like best of matches. I mean, they're putting entire matches. They even went as far as putting the entire G1 Supercard from Madison Square Garden from 2019 on YouTube. There is no shortage of content out there to watch. For people complaining that there's no professional wrestling to watch, there's a ton. You just have to look a little bit for it. It may not be happening live at the time, but there is a ton out there to watch. Even in the WWE context and the network, you can go back and there's everything that you can watch.
There definitely is. And I mean, I'm even finding little things on the WWE Network that I haven't ever seen before.
Yeah, me too.
So, I mean, stuff like that is phenomenal to be able to see. And yeah, I get it. You know, some of the stuff is from like the 80s and some of it's from like the 90s and, you know, some of it's from the 2000s era. But I'm finding other things that I have not seen before, so they're new to me.
Yep.
You talk about Ring of Honor putting that stuff out. MLW does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at Ignite Wrestling with our friend Kim Artlip in Vero Beach, Florida. She's putting content out there as well for everyone on YouTube for people to have that professional wrestling. And this is a time where if you go to YouTube, just type in professional wrestling or independent professional wrestling, you're going to find a plethora of companies that are out there that are putting out content onto YouTube for people to be able to watch. And this is stuff that you haven't seen. So it's almost as though it's like a live show that's happening because you've never seen it before, and now you're getting the opportunity to watch.
Yeah, I guess it's specifically for myself that Madison Square Garden show that Ring of Honor in New Japan did. I mean, they put up there in its entirety, including the Honor Rumble that they did, where we saw, you know, people like Great Muta involved in that. So some great stuff there. So there's no shortage of content out there. Just because live professional wrestling isn't happening doesn't mean that there's any shortage to watch. If you're somebody that likes the old school stuff on the WWE Network, I mean, we got old WCW stuff. There's AWA. There's Mid-South Atlantic. I mean, there's a plethora of old content there that is arguably better than what you could be seeing live right now. So go and check it out. And you don't need to be deprived as a wrestling fan because there actually is a fair amount out there to watch.
That's right.
All right, Karl, before we take our break and do our Showstopper segment here, let's do our match of the week. I know, as we had just mentioned, there's not a whole lot of live or current professional wrestling going on, but there is still some. I think AEW, I guess, would be the main one that's still kind of trucking ahead. And that's where my match of the week comes from, is from the most recent episode of AEW Dynamite. I am talking the tag team matchup between the Best Friends and Kenny Omega and Mr. Michael Nakazawa. I enjoyed that match. It was a fun little tag team match. I know people aren't too big on Nakazawa, but I mean, he makes it entertaining, he makes it fun, and I like that aspect of professional wrestling, and mixed with some good technical stuff in there. When you get Chucky T in there with a guy like Kenny Omega, it's hard to not be entertained by that, at least for myself. So I enjoyed that match, and I think the majority of you out there would as well.
Definitely. It was a great match to see. Again, AEW coming out and, giving some good stuff for all of us. Another good one and probably my match of the week here, coming from the new tournament that has started, where we're looking at Cody and Sean Spears. Yep. This is the first time that there is a rematch between the two of them since All Out. Mm-hmm. This time the stakes are a little bit higher, as the winner would move on to the finals for the TNT Championship. I mean, just phenomenal coming out of both of them, and I mean, it's good to see. It's very, very good to see, and I'm super happy with everything that's been going on right now in AEW. Kenny Omega and Nakazawa there. I mean, that was great too. And even I think what I liked more about it was actually the build up to it, where you had Kenny Omega and Nakazawa in the trailer, and they're kind of talking a bit before, and then Nakazawa says, "Oh, we best friends." We best friends. That's we call ourselves best friends. And then Kenny Omega's like, well, we can't. We've already got that. And Nakazawa's like, you management, you make it happen. Right. And then Orange Cassidy comes out of the bathroom and opens up the door. And then there's, Trent and Chuck Taylor. And then just that whole thing of it made the entire match for me, because we got to see a reason for these guys to be in a match. And the reason for that was the winner gets to be called best friends. That's just a small little thing, but it was good.
That's That's something that AEW always does well. Those little things, like you said, given a reason for that match. Even they're set up to the Jake Hager and Moxley matchup that's coming up. I believe that this week is that. Hager even mentioning now, if I win, not only am I the top guy, but I make more money being the top guy. Giving like some motivation, some reasoning to kind of win, something that WWE doesn't do. So I like how they did that back on that tag team match too. What I really loved about that match too is they had Sean Spears on the outside talking shit the whole time, especially to Nakazawa, and like, dude, what's with the oil? And it just kind of poking and prodding him. I thought that stuff was fantastic. So I enjoyed that aspect of not only the match, but just the extracurricular activity happening outside the ring as well.
That's right. And I've always talked about it. It's those little things for me that really stand out and make a good matchup. And you mentioned Sean Spears out there, right? He's looking for a tag team partner. And he the very beginning of it was, Nakazawa, I'm looking at you. I'm watching you, right? And then they just continued with it. But not to the point where it was like, okay, like, dude, shut the hell up. It was more like, okay, yeah. No, I get that. Sean, he's throwing out there, what's with the baby oil? Yep. Okay. No, and playing into those little gimmicky things that Nakazawa does, and it was just all around. You're right, like all around. This was just so well done. Very happy with it.
Enjoyed it. All right, before we take our brief break here, Karl, to our Showstopper segment, a couple pieces of breaking news that we need to mention here, and this is one that you brought up to me just shortly before we started recording. I'm glad that you brought this to my attention here, because this is a fairly big deal, because I would say it's pretty fair to say that a lot of professional wrestling fans are gamers as well, and like to play professional wrestling games, and it looks like the upcoming version of the WWE game 2K1 looks like it may be canceled. Which, I mean, frankly, is not too surprising, given, just the current landscape of just society kind of in general, but also the fact that the previous game was absolutely garbage. I think it's pretty widely agreed that there's no many redeemable qualities of that, other than maybe it looks not bad. But all hope is not lost, because it looks like there may be another one to enter the ring, so to speak, in this coming year. So we might not get a 2K version of WWE. We might get something else from somebody else. So I'm interested to see if maybe it'll be more like an arcade approach, or if somebody else will kind of get into the simulated kind of thing, or if it'll be kind of like Fire Pro. I'm interested to see what can kind of come of this, and could be something that's just different, because it has been getting kind of stale year to year with these 2K wrestling games.
It definitely has, and on top of that, they keep adding more and more and more into the game, and they're kind of getting away from the whole reason for it. It's a professional wrestling game. It's for us to be able to live out our professional wrestling fantasies and have these dream matchups like we had talked about a little earlier with the tag teams. This gives us an opportunity to take the Legion of Doom and put them into a match with the Revival. And I mean, adding in and keeping little things like the Creator Wrestler is a great idea. I love that aspect of a wrestling video game, is that you can create yourself, because in the end, isn't that what we all want? We all want our own professional wrestling persona. We all want to be able to say, I have entered that ring and I have done that as this character. And this gives you that outlet to be able to go into the professional wrestling world and be that character that you want to be.
Yep.
All these other different things in there, though, I don't think are really needed.
No.
Just bring it back to a basic. One of the things that you, me, and our friend Jeremiah used to do was we would go to his place, and he had, what was it, a Super Nintendo? And he was playing, he had the games, right? And Joe's showing me right now, you guys can't see that, but like the Royal Rumble video game,
Yep.
that one there that Joe has is from the Genesis,
Yep.
but we were playing it on the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
And it was great. We loved it because that's all it was. We went out there and there wasn't all this creator wrestler. There wasn't all this, go through the years of being this person. And there wasn't any of that. It was pick your guy. I'm going to pick my guy and we're going to fight. And that was it. And it was so good, so fun, so entertaining. And it allowed us an outlet to have our professional wrestling fantasies taken care of. And I mean, that was definitely one of the highlights for me when it comes to growing up. And my love of professional wrestling happened because I was able to share it with some friends. So
what was really cool about that one in particular, I'm glad that you had mentioned that one, because I mean, the hours and upon hours and hours that were spent playing that, and I just loved, especially in the Royal match itself, if you wore your opponent down to basically entirely nothing, you could actually hip toss them out of the ring from the middle of the ring if you timed it correctly. That was entertaining as hell. It was almost kind of like trolling your who you were playing with, and that was a great thing too, because you were usually you were playing with people right next to you, and then when you could pull that off to somebody, it was like kind of rubbing it in their face. It was hilarious and it was fantastic. It was fun. One more piece of news that is kind of loosely, is not technically professional wrestling topic, but I mean it is tied to WWE, so it is worth mentioning because it's something that I think everybody kind of got invested in. And we're talking about the XFL. Now this is coming from TMZ, so that to keep that in mind. But I mean I've seen this confirmed by more than a few sources now, is that it looks like the XFL has filed for what's called Chapter 11, and in the U.S. As referred to as bankruptcy. So the XFL has officially filed for bankruptcy. They are done. They have lost tens upon millions of dollars, and they are done, which is very unfortunate and kind of contrary to what Vince was kind of telling us. So it's very interesting that this has come to light here.
When did that come to light? Because that's, I mean, even to me, that's news to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was posted, I believe it was today.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I have not seen. And I mean, it's coming from TMZ, which, I mean, they like to skew things. They definitely do. So I don't know. I hope not, to be honest, because I was very much so enjoying
for sure
the XFL. I was enjoying the XFL being back. I chose a team. I was before all of this started.
But given
the Canadian dollar went to crap, I was ready to purchase a St. Louis Battlehawks jersey.
Yeah.
I was ready to spend that money. And I mean, I really hope that this is not the case.
When you look into the financials on this here, Karl, when it comes to the people who are financially invested in this, especially Vince, especially other shareholders and people involved, honestly, at this point, given that it's so new, this is the best move to make, because financially, they could save themselves a lot of money by doing this. Otherwise, if they wait too long, it's going to be a huge loss on top of what it's already been. So honestly, because this is so new, this is the smart move to make, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, it's only been a year.
No, if that.
It's only been, it's I'd like not even a year. Like,
no.
you have to understand that in business, you're going to lose money the first little bit before, it starts to make money for you. It's classic business. I mean, you have to be there, in business for at least a minimum of 5 years to really be able to say this is going to go somewhere or this is not. And I know from experiences that the first little while, you are going to be losing money. You definitely will be. And like anything, you have to spend money to make money. Given the circumstances, though, with everything that's going on, they did have to have a layoff of essentially everybody. Right? Could it be a good thing? It could be.
It's gonna have to be.
But it's terrible. I hate seeing this because I was really starting to enjoy and get invested into the program.
Best way I can
short-lived as it was.
Best way I can kind of word the situation here, Karl, for the XFL this time: right place, wrong time. I think that sums it up really. They were arguably doing very well, but just bad timing. And it doesn't fall on their shoulders at all. It's just given what's going on with this virus. It was just poorly timed. And honestly, I think getting out now, money wise, probably really is the wisest move. And maybe once the dust all clears here, they can come back as something else. They may not be able to name it the XFL again, but time will tell. But it's one of those things that we'll be keeping track of.
We definitely will be keeping track of it, and as more of this news breaks in any of the worlds of professional wrestling, we try our best to be on top of things and post it for you on our social media. You can find that at TB Talk Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yes.
So make sure you're following us on those platforms. And like I said, both of us, as we said at the beginning, both of us are still working. So it's a little harder for us to be able to just sit in front of a computer and start sharing this stuff out as it happens. But we try our best to make sure that we're bringing you guys the news, whether that's from thegorillaposition.com or whether that's from IndiePW or whether that's from any of the hot tag media stuff that happens as well. We try to make sure that we are supporting them, and we want you guys to support them too. So anything that you see us share from any of those three, go and like those pages too, because it's amazing content.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. And just back briefly too, on that, I've seen that it looks like a lot of season ticket holders, they've been refunded as well. So it's usually a good sign that something pretty big is about to happen there. So yeah, unfortunate. The XFL, it looked like it was going to really kind of be something, but like I said, just wrong place at the wrong time. Hopefully they can rebound after. I just don't think that they'll be able to call it that again. But it's, like I said, it's just something that we'll have to wait and see on. So we're going to take a brief break here, Karl. We're going to come back with our Showstopper segment, and we're really going to rewind the clock on this one. I think this could be a bit of an interesting discussion. We're going to find out exactly when we both became fans of professional wrestling, so we'll be right back. This week's episode is brought to you by Collar & Elbow. Visit collarandelbowbrand.com where you can get an additional 10% off when using promo code JKPodcast at the checkout, including this week's featured item, the Mirror Pullover Hoodie. All right, guys, Big Joe and Karl Karufel back here on Turnbuckle Talk.
Yes, we are, and we are at that great segment that we love to bring to you guys every week. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Showstopper segment.
Yeah, I thought we'd have a bit of fun with this one here this week. I know it's been something that a lot of people have asked myself. I'm sure you've been asked about it. And just given that there is not a whole lot of current live professional wrestling going on, I figured this is another good one to kind of take on here. As I've been asked several times, Joe, what's the very first match that you saw that kind of got you into professional wrestling, got you kind of interested? And this is a little bit tough to find because you got to keep in mind, this is from 1986. And I would have been 6 years old at the time, so it was a little tough to kind of figure this out because I knew it obviously involved Roddy Piper, but I wasn't sure exactly what. So I did a quick YouTube search. I just typed in Roddy Piper match 1986 and kind of scrolled through some, and then I saw one that really stood out to me and triggered the memory. I was like, that was it. So for me, The very first professional wrestling match that I ever watched that got me hooked right off the hop was from 1986, November 1st, an episode of Superstars. This would have been WWF Superstars, matchup between Roddy Piper and Mr. Fuji. And just watching Piper in the ring during this match as a 6-year-old kid, I was like, that's cool. This is something that I want to keep watching and be into. That for me, that was the light bulb. That was the trigger moment. As soon as I saw that happen, I was like, wow. I was in awe.
And I mean, that's exactly how things should be. And especially if you're getting into something or you've seen something that you were just like, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a story about this, about the first experience that you had with whatever it is. And I mean, that's amazing.
Yep.
And if you have been a longtime listener, you know that Roddy Piper is Joe's all-time favorite in the business. So it's nice to be able to kind of look back on where it started from.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't a matchup.
Ooh, okay.
Mine is a little bit different. I was young in age, and the family took a trip to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, one of the hot beds of professional wrestling in Canada. My Oma, or grandmother, was a fan of professional wrestling.
Go figure.
And the apartment complex that my Oma and my Opa were living in was really neat because you could, it was like attached almost to like a mall. So you literally, you go down the elevator, you could go down in like slippers. It didn't matter. You go down in slippers and get off on this floor, and then you're like, go down a hallway and you walk into a mall. And my first experience with it was walking past one of those old classic newsstands. This one was a double-sided one, kind of like in the middle of the hallway. And there on the bottom shelf was this bright orange magazine. Now, I'd always been a fan of the color orange, so I was drawn to this. And I went over to it, and I picked it up, and I started looking through it, and I was like, it's orange, and I like this. And I started seeing all of these wrestlers, and it was an old like WrestleMania magazine that was out there. And my parents had kind of, like taken it out of my hand, put it back, and like, no, like you don't need this. And my Oma steps in and goes, nope, I buy that for him. And that is where my start with professional wrestling came in, was that my Oma bought this magazine for me, and I still have that magazine to this day. It's a little beat up. It's had some cuts taken into it, inside the pages and stuff like that, because I was cutting out my favorite wrestlers and putting them onto, cardboard to put up and stuff like that. And I think really everything kind of culminated come my 13th birthday, where the one who essentially started my love of professional wrestling passed away. My Oma died on my 13th birthday. Oh. And that really solidified things for me, going, this is meant. This is just meant to be my thing. Yeah. So I guess, that's my story anyways. Started young with a simple magazine, culminating at the age of, well, not culminating, but really having a rejuvenation at the age of 13, when the one who got me into a love for this on my birthday passes away. And it was just written in the stars.
For me, for my story, there's a little bit more to it as well. Coming from family as well, specifically my great grandfather, being an elderly French Canadian man. You could just imagine at that time period who he was a fan of. Clearly, if you were a French Canadian, you were a fan of Andre the Giant. And that's another thing too for my youth, that my great grandfather was probably one of the Andre the Giant fan. Like, he wasn't a Andre the Giant fan, he was the Andre the Giant fan. He even had pictures taken with him and whatnot. And so yeah, there was a bit of a seed planted there too. I remember as a kid kind of seeing the stuff, and I was like, and didn't know what quite to think of it at that point. But then, watching more, and then, like I said, my first match there with Piper and Fuji, I mean, that solidified it there. So yeah, it's interesting that that was the case, both kind of stemming from family there, which is interesting. So it was kind of being passed down.
Definitely, and that's what a lot of professional wrestling seems to be. It seems to be very generational.
It does,
right? I mean, even looking at the big conglomerate company of the WWE today, starting with Vince McMahon Sr. And Vince McMahon Jr. taking over, and now like Stephanie and Triple H, kind of seemingly being the next ones that will step into that role. So it's professional wrestling is a very generational thing, and if you're out there and you have children and you're feeling like, oh, I don't want them to really, don't do that. Don't do that. You get them into the world of professional wrestling.
Yep.
Let them see what the world of professional wrestling is, and they can make the decision from there. Absolutely. Just like everything else. Absolutely. Right? You're going to show them baseball, and they might not like it. You're going to show them hockey. They may not like it. They may love it. That may be their thing. Yep. But give them the option. Let them see some professional wrestling, and maybe you can have a generational story just like Big Joe and I.
There you go. Yeah, that's a pretty good way to wrap up things for this week here, Karl. And as usual, as we've been kind of saying recently, just given what's going on recently, as much as possible, try and stay home, and so we can kind of help fight the spread of this. I mean, even as we're kind of recording here in the background, I have CP24, which is Toronto News, kind of going on in the background. It's on mute. And I got to say, just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit on this kind of stuff, when you watch these presentations, they always have somebody doing the sign language version of what's being said, and especially in mute. It's very kind of comedic to kind of watch, given that you're not really getting the context of what's going on. You see this person kind of signing kind of what's going on. And one in particular, I think it's during the Doug Ford ones. There's the guy that does it, and he's very boisterous. Like, it's very much reminds me of our friend in AEW with the overactive referee in the ring. That it almost kind of in a kind of a roundabout, weird kind of way, it reminded me of that. And this person signing what's kind of going on in these press conferences, it's borderline comedic given the scenarios. So yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, having said that, stay safe, folks, and stay at home if at all possible, so that we can try and put an end to this in a reasonable amount of time. Because it's I don't know about you, I don't know about our listeners, but it's getting to be a little bit much, and it is still a bit on the stressful side. So it'll be nice when this all kind of goes away, and hopefully it does soon.
Definitely, I share those sentiments. And don't forget, people, follow us at TV Talk Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And now Anchor.fm, as well as Spotify. So if you subscribe to Spotify, even if you just have a free version of Spotify, our podcast is now available there. Thank you again to everybody who continues to listen to us on a weekly basis. We love you guys. We are so thankful for all of you. And we ask one thing. You like the episode? Share it out with your friends. Make sure that everyone can hear #Dem Canadian Boys going and talking some professional wrestling to you. Thank you again, everyone, and have a nice day.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
It's me. It's an honor to be the beat. As you can tell in the background, we are out celebrating. That is what we do here at hittingthemarks.com. And I invite everyone to continue to tune in to Turnbuckle Talk, but check out all of our other shows we have. You can find that all at hittingthemarks.com.
Run.